Good evening, and thank you for inviting me to address this esteemed group of well-respected members of the Appellate Court, Superior Court, colleagues, bar leaders, community leaders, and scholarship recipients. This evening I'm going to discuss with you an array of topics, some of them popular, most of them unpopular, but nevertheless I've been asked to speak, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about some issues that I believe should be addressed here. It's an exceptional pleasure for me to have here on this happy occasion my wife of 30 years, who I've been married to, excuse me, of course I've been married to her, my wife of 30 years, who I happened to meet at Fresno State University, Angelica, and my daughter Alexia, who is currently an intern with the Kern County District Attorney's Office. Although I know many of you, some of you I met years ago when I was a high school student attending the Chicano Youth Conference at Fresno State University. And it was because of role models like Joel Murillo, Commissioner Phil Silva, El Valdez, who had black hair back then, Judge Mario Olmos, and others who took time out of their busy schedules to spend the Saturday morning to speak to a group of high school students and tell us their stories of how they overcame their personal struggles to pursue their dreams of becoming a lawyer. They let it be known that a migrant farm worker, Chicanito from Porterville, had it within him to become a lawyer. Their profession was my goal, and I am forever grateful to them for guiding me and making my dream come true. And I saw Phil back there. Thank you very much. The role model concept still holds true today. A couple of years ago, I received a letter from a court docent telling me about a conversation that she had with a young Latino student from Wasco. Now, I practice law in Kern County, and a lot of my practice is also in Fresno County, most of it in federal court. But in this particular occasion, in Kern County, we have docents who actually take students on tours of the courthouse. One day, I was arguing a motion to suppress evidence in a courtroom when this group of 6th grade students, and mostly Latino students, quietly walked into the courtroom and observed the proceedings. Now, as one can imagine, the only 2 Latinos inside the well were myself and the defendant. I was the one wearing the suit. Now, after the hearing, the students were escorted out of the courtroom, and at that time, the docent felt a tug at her jacket, and she looked down, and it was one of the students, and it was a young Latino student. And she asked, well, what's wrong? Can I help you? And he said, yes, that Mexican man in the courtroom. Who was he? And she looked up, she said, well, she looked down, she said, well, that's Mr. Torres. He's a lawyer. And he looks up at her and he said, you mean people like me can be lawyers? You know, you talked about that today. And it just made me, this story, I wrote this a while back. This story is actually true, and it's a letter that my wife keeps. And it's something that brings a tear to her eye from time to time. And I thought that this story would be important to share with you. Because whether a student is from Pardier, Sanger, Del Rey, or Selma, the important thing to keep in mind is that you are a Latino lawyer. And that is the #1 vision that the student will keep in his or her mind, perhaps for a lifetime. And exploit that for the good of the community. You will never know if you impacted their lives, just as I'm certain that many of you here do not know how positive an influence you played in my life when I was a student at Fresno State University. All of us owe a debt to our future, and our future will only get brighter if we continue to work together as we have in the past. So never forget where you came from, and never forget what it took to get you here. Now, in the next few minutes, what I'd like to talk to you about is the State Bar Board of Trustees. But before I do, I'd like to recognize a couple of young, talented individuals. The first one first of all, I would like to tell you that Fresno happens to be within the 5th district. And it's my understanding at a recent bar meeting that I had that the 5th district has recently had the largest surge of applications to join the California Young Lawyers Association. What that tells me is that there are a significant amount of young lawyers from our particular district who happen to want to be involved, who are eager to be involved in activities with the bar, and that's a good thing. Now, one of these stellar gentlemen happens to be here this evening, and he's one of the elected Chicanos who happens to be on the state bar, Young Lawyers Association. But not only is he on the state bar, California Young Lawyers Association, he is the elected official for the Stockton City Council. Oh, we don't really want that job, we know their financial woes, right? But ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Moses Sapien. Thank you. The other person is obviously one of our own. And I'd like to recognize her as well because this woman is a member of the California Young Lawyers Association. She's also on the board of directors for the California Bar Foundation. She was named the Northern California's Rising Star for 2010 and 2012, and last year received the 2012 Jack Berman Award for distinguished service to the public and for our profession. This woman is going to go places. She's on the rise. Woman, young lady, ladies and gentlemen, Ana de Alba, please stand. To our scholarship recipients, Alejandria, Amanda, Joshua, Virginia, and Sarah, talk to these folks, talk to these young lawyers. This is where you are going to be in a couple of years. And remember, we're watching you, all right? We're going to make sure of that. Last year, I was elected to serve on the State Bar Board of Trustees. I am, in fact, the first Latino I'm aware of ever elected to participate or to be elected to this particular seat. And I'm certainly not going to be the last one. Also, our valley is very fortunate to have Justice Rosendo Peña, the very first Latino appointed to the 5th DCA. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, Justice Peña was one of the founders of the Chicanos in Law, and ultimately followed in his footsteps. Thank you, Justice Peña. And if were it not for him, and this is an important statistic, earlier he talked about a lot of us individuals here, lawyers, being part of the California Chicanos in Law. Statistically, I think well over 70% of us back then have become, or are now members of the bar. And I think that thanks to Justice Peña's leadership and guidance, we can all thank him for that. But I think also it's very significant to say that he is in fact the first Latino to be appointed to the 5th District Court of Appeal. But also, everyone here should know that as of today, there is in every one of the 6 district courts of appeal in the state of California, we have a Latino or Latina who currently sits as a justice. This is history in the making of the state in California. Never before has this ever happened, and thank you, Governor Brown. And I can say this much, although it may be a bit premature, but it is quite possible that next year, in the rich history of the California State Bar, that quite possible we may have next year, this coming year I should say, the very first Latino president of the California State Bar. And if that happens, ladies and gentlemen, I've already booked them to speak here next year, okay? So we're thinking ahead. We're moving forward. Although I'm relatively new to the board, much has happened over these last few months. And I really enjoy this position because basically it gets me back down into the trenches of doing things for attorneys And many of you that have known me know that I've been extremely involved with many community issues from time to time over the last, 30 years or so. We recently passed a healthcare bill which will allow attorneys to purchase either individual or group healthcare at competitive prices. And this is something that's very dear to me, as I've seen firsthand many solo practitioners who have struggled with the cost of private healthcare. Now, another bill that we have passed is a somewhat contentious one, but nevertheless, again, I feel compelled to agree with. We're going to consider, okay, so I can still walk out to my car safely. We're going to consider a slight increase in our yearly bar dues. But, hold on, I said consider, okay. Got him right? But that particular increase is actually going to go towards funding legal aid. Some of you who work in legal aid need to realize, or do realize, that since 2008, when the budget for IOTA, interest on legal trust accounts, was $22 million, it has now reduced to $8 million. We need individuals that are out there. We need money to hire lawyers to assist the poor, the downtrodden. We need access to justice. And this is one way that we as attorneys have an obligation to provide access to justice to those individuals who cannot afford it. That is why I believe that this bill is important, and that is why I believe that we should support such a bill. And ladies and gentlemen, I intend to fully go forward with this. However, I do need that support. But again, this is under consideration, and we have not yet selected any type of figure at this time. There, I said it. But I will say this much. What the figures that we've looked at with 240,000 members of the California State Bar, $10 increase on your bar dues would mean that would create a $2 million fund. So obviously that amount of money, or even a $20 increase, would give us $4 million in funds to help us give money to legal aid so that we can get more lawyers to help fund legal assistance for the downtrodden. Now, I want to talk to you about another area of concern that I have. And again, this is an issue that may be unpopular with some, but I'm hoping that it will be popular with many of you. This past January, at a state bar meeting, we had lunch with former Supreme Court Justice Cruz Reynoso. And he spoke to us about various topics, but primarily one of the issues that we talked about was the bar pass rates. And Cruz Reynoso said there are three areas or three skill sets which must be taught by law schools. Skill set number one, law schools must teach the law, obviously. But skill set number two is that law schools must also teach the students on how to take an exam, and three, how to practice the law. But what he did say is that law schools are becoming increasingly deficient in teaching students on how to pass the bar exam. Now, in doing that, after he said that, he was talking about a young lady who happened to be from Fresno, California. And he said, you know, this young lady, from all accounts, was a great advocate. She's an excellent writer, but she's got trouble with the bar. She has some trouble with the bar. And this somewhat sparked my interest. But I'll talk to you about that in a minute. Weeks later, I did some research, and I want to give you some alarming statistics here. The population of California is 37.7 million. Of that, Latinos comprise 38.2 million, which is roughly 14.4 million. There are approximately 240,000 members of the California Bar. Now, I'm going to give you a 2011 statistic, but the current statistic is not that far off. Of the 240,000 members of the California Bar, Asians account for 7.7% of the California bar membership. Blacks account for 2.7% of the membership of the California bar. Latinos account for 4.2%. If you look at that from a statistical standpoint, that's approximately 10,000. Now, that's give or take or more. We know that there's just a little bit more than that, but that's the figure that we have at this point in time. But nevertheless, that's still a figure that is an uncalled for figure. That still is a figure that is an unacceptable figure. And what we have to do is we have to figure out a way, how are we going to increase that figure? Because I don't think that there's anybody here who's going to accept that particular figure. And if there is, please raise your hand. Now let us talk about the bar exam rates. And this is what we were talking about with respect to Grupo Reynoso. Now, the bar, when you look at the statistics on the CalBar website, it's quite evident that over the past 20 years, when you look at the matrix, which is divided between whites, blacks, Asians, and Hispanics, the matrix shows that the rate for California ABA accredited schools, the first time bar pass rate for whites is close to 75%. The bar pass rate for Latinos is about 23% lower than that, and that is a consistent statistic. The bar pass rate for blacks is about 25 to 26%, and the Asian is about 27, well actually about 22%. These are staggering statistics. These are uncalled for statistics. And we don't know why that's happening. And if you look at the California bar and you look at the reasons why this is happening, this California bar exam has been studied inside, it's been prodded inside and out, and everybody says that the exam is fair. And so it is, and so be it. But rather than sit on our hands and accept this crisis, I'm working with others to find a solution to close the gap. And this is what I'm going to ask you to join me, and I'm going to challenge you to work with me. Now let's begin with the premise that as a Latino organization, to increase the number of Latino membership in a bar association, that is our goal. Now this summer, there was a study that was performed by 2 deans of extremely prominent California law schools. Now the idea was to develop a course on how to take the exam, specifically with the Black, Asian, and Latino students in mind. The course begins 6 weeks prior to graduation from law school. So in other words, these third-year students or fourth-year students, prior to graduating from law school, begin this course. The problem is that with Proposition 209, the law schools can't just say, hey, we're opening a course special for blacks, Latinos, and Asians. Can't be done. So this basically, well, it just can't be done like that. So those minorities who took this particular course passed the state bar on the first sitting. The information I have is that the minorities who did not take the course failed. Now this by no means was a scientific study, and the results themselves are not scientific results. But it nevertheless is a promising solution, and it nevertheless gives us something to work with rather than sitting on our hands and saying, wow, these are abysmal bar pass rates, or these are abysmal statistics with respect to Latino lawyers. We need more Latino lawyers. Well, you know what? Let's get off our dust and do something about it. So I'm now going to issue the challenge, and here it is. The state bar itself has its hands tied with Proposition 209. But what we're basically taking a look at is perhaps seeing if we could get the foundation of the state bar to provide this information information, this course. And the course would have to be administered by local bar association, i.e. the black law, or the black legal organizations, La Raza Law Organization, and the Asian Bar Association. But that would require a 6-week commitment by members of the La Raza Lawyers Association to ensure that we try to work with 4th year, because it's San Joaquin College of Law, to assist these folks to ensure that we would increase the bar pass rate amongst Latinos in this particular area. So we're asking you to give up 2, 3, or 6 weeks of your time to try to work out this project. Now I will be keeping in touch with William as this year goes on, because if we are able to successfully do what we can do or need to do in order to launch this particular project, our target will probably be bar 2014. But we'll keep you in touch on that, and we'll keep you updated as it goes. So let me now finish by telling you the rest of the story on why Justice Reynoso chose to take up this issue as one of his issues concerning bar pass rates. He said he was moved by a story of a brilliant young lady who he called an attorney, who has yet to pass the Cal Bar, but is as fine an attorney as he has ever met. Her name is Aida Macedo, and I'm honored to have Aida sit at my table. Aida, please stand. She is persevering and has gained the honor and respect of Justice Reynoso. Thank you very much. As Justice Reynoso told me, the time is now that we raise the consciousness of all Latino lawyers about the bar pass gap. The time is now that we raise the consciousness of all Latino lawyers about raising our membership in the California bar from 4 to 40% to equal our Latino population. This Tuesday marks the 50th anniversary of the Gideon versus Wainwright decision. Now, as many of you know, in that case, it took one man, one letter, written in pencil, to forever change the course of our access to justice and right to counsel in our legal system. On Mr. Gideon's gravestone is a quote from a letter he wrote to his attorney, and it says, "Each year finds an improvement in law for the benefit of mankind." Ladies and gentlemen, this is our era. Surely, if one man's action on a piece of paper can seismologically change the landscape of the legal system, why can't we, as a group, rise to the challenge and change the complexion of our state bar? Ours is a noble profession, but diversity makes it a magnificent one. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your patience and time.